The rain had just started to fall outside Golden Palm Diner, a small roadside café that had once been the pride of the town, but now looked tired, with its flickering neon sign and cracked window glass. Inside, the scent of brewed coffee and fried plantains hung in the air. Behind the counter stood Mabel Johnson, a 70-year-old black woman with kind brown eyes, soft wrinkles that deepened whenever she smiled, and silver-streaked curls tied neatly into a bun under her faded uniform cap. She moved slowly, her joints aching from years of double shifts, yet she still greeted every customer with the same gentle warmth. It was a quiet afternoon until a sleek black car pulled up in front of the diner. The door opened, and Vanessa Cole, a young, light-skinned woman in her late 20s, stepped out, heels clicking sharply against the wet pavement. She wore a tailored red suit, her long hair perfectly straightened, her phone glued to her ear as she barked instructions at someone on the other end. The door chime jingled as she entered, her perfume filling the room before her voice did.
"Is anyone working here, or is this place run by ghosts?"
she said impatiently, tossing her designer bag onto the counter.
Mabel wiped her hands on her apron and approached her with her usual polite smile. "Good afternoon, sweetheart. What can I get you today?"
Vanessa glanced up briefly, frowning.
"You can start by moving faster. I don't have all day."
Mabel nodded quietly, trying not to take it to heart. She'd learned over the years that kindness didn't always earn kindness back. She poured coffee carefully into a mug and brought it to Vanessa's table, her hands trembling slightly from arthritis.
The coffee sloshed a little onto the saucer, and Vanessa groaned. "Are you serious?" She grabbed a napkin and dabbed the spill dramatically. "Do they not train you old folks anymore?"
Mabel froze, her chest tightening.
"I'm sorry, dear. I didn't mean—"
Before she could finish, Vanessa snapped. Her hand came down sharply across Mabel's cheek. The sound cracked through the diner like thunder. The few customers inside turned their heads in stunned silence.
Mabel stood still, her eyes wide but calm. She didn't raise her voice. She simply whispered, "May the Lord forgive you, child."
Vanessa blinked, realizing what she had done, but pride quickly replaced regret. "Just bring me another cup, and try not to spill it this time."
At that exact moment, the door opened again, quietly this time. A tall, elegant man in his late 30s stepped inside, wearing a dark suit still damp from the rain. Desmond Carter, a black billionaire entrepreneur, had just returned to his hometown for the first time in decades. He scanned the room, eyes narrowing as he noticed Mabel clutching her cheek.
He knew that face. For a second, time folded in on itself, and he saw memory, a small, hungry boy being handed warm cornbread by that same gentle woman. Years ago, back when she was a nanny for a struggling family. Mabel Johnson, the woman who had once fed him when his own mother couldn't. Desmond stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "Excuse me," he said, looking straight at Vanessa. "Did I just see what I think I saw?"
Vanessa straightened up, startled. "Who are you?"
He didn't answer her question. Instead, he turned to Mabel. "Ma'am, are you all right?"
Mabel gave a small, trembling smile. "I'm fine, son. It's nothing."
Desmond's jaw clenched. "No, it's not nothing."
The diner was dead silent now. Vanessa's confidence began to falter as she noticed the man's expensive watch, his composed demeanor, and the unmistakable aura of someone used to power. Still, she folded her arms. "Look, I don't know who you think you are, but she—"
Desmond interrupted softly. "Her name is Miss Mabel Johnson, and you just hit the woman who practically raised me."
Vanessa blinked, confused. "What?"
Mabel's eyes widened too. "Desmond? Little Desmond Carter?"
He smiled faintly. Yes, ma'am. The same boy who used to sneak extra pancakes when you weren't looking.
Her hand flew to her mouth as tears welled up. Lord have mercy. I never thought I'd see you again. Desmond turned back to Vanessa, his expression unreadable. You just made the biggest mistake of your life. And with that, the storm outside began to roar louder, as if echoing the storm that was about to unfold inside that little diner. The rain outside had turned into a torrential downpour, hammering against the diner's old windows like nature itself was demanding justice. Inside, silence pressed down thick and heavy. Vanessa sat frozen in her seat, her manicured fingers gripping her coffee cup, while Desmond Carter, the tall, sharply dressed black man with a quiet but commanding presence, stood beside Mabel Johnson, the frail 70-year-old black waitress whose face still bore the faint redness of the slap. Desmond's voice, when it finally came, was calm but cold. "Apologize," he said simply. Vanessa blinked, incredulous. "Excuse me?" He didn't repeat himself. He didn't need to. The weight in his tone made every word hang in the air like thunder before a strike. "I said," he repeated quietly, "apologize to this woman, right now." Vanessa gave a nervous laugh, trying to reclaim her arrogance. "You don't understand. She spilled coffee on me. She was—" Desmond's sharp gaze cut through her words. "Are you making excuses for hitting someone's grandmother?" The room fell silent again. The few customers who remained tried not to stare, but couldn't look away. Even the cook in the back stopped moving, spatula frozen mid-air. Vanessa's confidence faltered. "Listen, I didn't mean... It's just that..." Mabel placed a gentle, trembling hand on Desmond's arm. "Son, please, don't make trouble. It's all right." Desmond trimmed to her, his expression softening instantly. "No, Miss Mabel, it's not all right. It's never all right when kindness is met with cruelty." Mabel's eyes shimmered. The last time she had seen him was a boy with torn shoes and hungry eyes, clutching a worn backpack as she slipped him a sandwich after church. And now he stood before her, tall, strong, successful, a living miracle she never expected to see again. Desmond took off his jacket and gently draped it over Mabel's shoulders. "You shouldn't have to stand here serving people like her anymore. You deserve better." Mabel smiled faintly, her voice soft as a whisper. "Serving others has been my blessing, Desmond, not my burden." Vanessa rolled her eyes, muttering under her breath, "This is ridiculous. I don't have time for this drama." Desmond turned his gaze back toward her, his calm now replaced by quiet fury. "Do you have any idea who this woman is? She used to feed half the neighborhood when everyone else turned their backs. When I was a boy with nothing, she fed me too." Vanessa blinked. You knew her?" "She's the reason I survived long enough to become who I am, and the reason I'll never forget where I came from." Mabel tried to protest, but Desmond continued, his tone now almost poetic in its conviction. "She didn't see color or status. She saw people. And you," she turned to Vanessa, "you saw only inconvenience." Vanessa shrank in her seat. For the first time she seemed genuinely embarrassed. I didn't know." "That's exactly the problem. You never even tried to." He pulled out his wallet and placed a thick wad of bills on the counter. "Miss Mabel, I want you to take a break. Go home early. I'll handle the rest." Mabel shook her head. "Desmond, I can't take that." "It's not charity," he said, smiling softly. "It's repayment for every meal you gave a hungry boy who couldn't pay." Her lips trembled as she whispered, "You were always a good-hearted child." Desmond turned to the diner's owner, a gruff middle-aged man watching from the kitchen doorway. "How much for the entire place?" The man's eyes widened. "The diner?" "Yes," Desmond said without hesitation. "The building, the land, everything. I'll double whatever you think it's worth." Mabel gasped. "Desmond, what on earth?" He smiled. "It's time to give this place a new name. A place where people are served with dignity, not slapped for being human." Vanessa looked stunned. "You can't be serious." Desmond's eyes flicked toward her one last time. "Dead serious. And I suggest you leave before you embarrass yourself further." Without another word, Vanessa grabbed her purse and stormed out, the echo of her heels fading beneath the sound of rain. Mabel stood there, her hands shaking. "You didn't have to do that for me." Desmond took her hand gently. "You did it for me first, years ago. Now it's my turn." Outside, thunder rolled across the sky, but inside that small diner, the storm was beginning to calm, replaced by something warmer, something redemptive. The next morning, sunlight crept through the cracked blinds of Mabel's small apartment, painting soft golden stripes across the worn wooden floor. She sat at her kitchen table in her faded floral robe, staring at a steaming cup of coffee she couldn't bring herself to drink. The events of the previous night replayed in her mind like scenes from a dream. The slap, Desmond's sudden appearance, his fierce defense, his impossible offer to buy the diner. Her heart fluttered with disbelief and gratitude, but also unease. After 70 years of struggling with little more than faith to carry her through, she didn't know how to accept kindness that large. She'd spent decades giving meals, time, prayers, comfort, but receiving, that was something she'd long forgotten how to do. The knock on the door startled her. 3 firm raps, steady and confident. She shuffled to the door, hesitating a moment before opening it. Desmond stood there, sharply dressed in a charcoal suit, holding a bag of groceries and wearing a boyish smile that somehow softened his powerful presence. "I figured you might not have had breakfast yet," he said. Mabel blinked. "Desmond, you didn't have to." He gently raised a hand. "Miss Mabel, if you say I didn't have to one more time, I might just stop listening." She chuckled, covering her mouth. All right. Come in before the neighbors start gossiping." He stepped inside, setting the groceries down and taking in the tiny apartment. Everything was neat and cared for, but clearly old. Threadbare curtains, patched furniture, faded photographs on the walls. In one frame, a much younger Mabel smiled beside a man in a mechanic's uniform. Desmond's gaze lingered on it. "Your husband?" he asked softly. Mabel nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "Henry. Gone almost 30 years now. Heart gave out after too many long shifts. I've been on my own since." Desmond's eyes softened. "You've done more alone than most people do in 2 lifetimes." Mabel smiled faintly, pulling eggs and bread from the bag. "You sure know how to flatter an old lady." "I'm just telling the truth," Desmond said, helping her crack eggs into a pan. They cooked in silence for a few moments. The simple sound of sizzling oil filled the kitchen, mingling with the smell of butter and toast. It was oddly peaceful, like the world had slowed down enough for both of them to breathe again. After breakfast, Desmond finally told her what he'd done. "I closed on the diner this morning. The papers are signed. It's officially yours." Mabel froze, fork halfway to her mouth. "Mine? Desmond, that's too much. I can't accept something like that." He leaned forward, his tone gentle but firm. "You can and you will. You built that diner more than anyone else ever did. You made it a place where people felt seen. I'm just giving it back to its rightful owner." Tears welled in Mabel's eyes. "You have no idea what this means to me." Desmond smiled. "I do, because once upon a time, you gave a hungry boy hope, and that's worth more than any business."
Mabel reached out and placed her hand over his. Her old skin was thin and soft, like parchment, but her grip still carried the quiet strength of years. "You turned out to be the kind of man your mama prayed you'd be." He looked down, swallowing hard. "She would have said that was because of you." Outside, the city hummed with life. Cars passing, birds chirping, the smell of rain still hanging in the air. But inside that little apartment, something deeper stirred. Healing. Meanwhile, across town, Vanessa sat in her car parked outside an office building, scrolling through social media. Her face was pale, her eyes red from crying. The incident at the diner had gone viral. Someone had recorded it, of course. Her name was being dragged through the mud. "Entitled woman slaps elderly waitress." The comments were brutal. She threw her phone onto the passenger seat and buried her face in her hands. "What have I done?" she whispered. For the first time in years, Vanessa felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel. Shame. Not the performative kind that comes from being caught, but the real, gut-deep kind that cracks the shell of ego and exposes the truth underneath. She didn't know it yet, but her path and Mabel's were far from over. Because sometimes grace doesn't end at forgiveness. It begins there.
2 days passed before Vanessa gathered the courage to return to that little diner. The sky was gray again, heavy with the promise of rain, as if the weather itself remembered what had happened there. She parked her car across the street and just sat there, staring at the freshly painted windows. The old neon sign that once flickered, Eddie's Grill, was gone. In its place, a new one gleamed proudly under the awning. Mabel's place, where kindness is served. Her throat tightened. Shame and longing warred inside her. Every part of her wanted to drive away, but something stronger, maybe guilt, maybe hope, made her open the car door. When she stepped inside, the diner looked completely transformed. The cracked vinyl booths had been replaced with soft blue leather, the lights were warm and golden, and photos lined the walls. Black and white snapshots of community events, smiling faces, and a much younger Mabel serving customers decades ago. The air smelled of coffee and cinnamon, and the low hum of gospel music played softly in the background. Behind the counter, wearing a crisp new apron embroidered with her name, stood Mabel Johnson. Her silver hair was pulled back neatly, and there was a glow about her that Vanessa hadn't seen that night, a peace that seemed to radiate from within. For a moment, Vanessa froze in the doorway, clutching her purse like a shield. Mabel turned, and their eyes met. The old woman's face softened. "You came back," she said quietly. "I wasn't sure you'd want to see me," Vanessa said. Mabel smiled, her expression warm but weary. "Child, holding grudges is too heavy for old bones." Vanessa's eyes brimmed with tears. I came to apologize, truly, this time. I know it doesn't mean much after what I did, but I can't stop thinking about it. About you." Mabel motioned to a booth. "Sit down before your legs give out." Vanessa managed a shaky laugh and did as she was told. Mabel poured her a cup of coffee, not out of duty, but out of grace. The simple act broke open something in Vanessa's chest. "I watched the video," Vanessa said softly. "People said awful things about me, and they were right. I was awful. But what hurt most wasn't what they said. It was seeing your face after I hit you. You didn't even look angry, just sad." Mabel sat down across from her, folding her hands. "That's because I wasn't angry. Anger fades, but sadness sticks when you see someone lose a piece of their humanity." Vanessa wiped at her eyes. "I've been chasing something my whole life, money, respect, approval. But that night, I realized I'd become the kind of person I swore I never would." Mabel's voice was gentle. "The good news is, as long as you realize that, it's not too late." "I don't know how to fix it," Vanessa whispered. "I can't undo what I did." "No, you can't," Mabel said. "But you can do better tomorrow. That's all any of us can do." Just then, Desmond entered the diner, carrying a set of papers and his usual unshakable calm. He stopped short when he saw Vanessa sitting there. "You came back," he said, his tone unreadable. Vanessa stood quickly. "Mr. Carter, I just wanted to apologize to both of you. I know sorry isn't enough, but I had to say it." Desmond studied her face for a long moment before nodding. "Then say it to yourself, too. You can't change how you treat others if you still hate who you are." Vanessa looked at him, startled by the unexpected kindness behind his words. "You really think I can change?" He smiled faintly. "If she believed a boy like me could, then yes, I believe you can too." Mabel's eyes softened as she looked between them. "Desmond, maybe the good Lord brought her here again for a reason." Desmond exhaled, almost amused. "You're probably right, Miss Mabel. You usually are." Vanessa looked down at her hands. "If there's anything I can do to make this right, anything at all?" Mabel smiled. "You can help me serve coffee." Vanessa blinked. "What?" "Start small," Mabel said, standing. "It's how the heart learns again." And so for the first time in her life, Vanessa rolled up her sleeves and stepped behind a counter to serve someone else. Her hands trembled as she poured a cup of coffee for an elderly man at the corner table, but when he smiled and thanked her, something inside her, something she didn't know she still had, began to heal. Across the diner, Desmond watched the scene unfold, his chest swelling with quiet pride. It wasn't wealth or power that changed people. It was compassion, the kind that costs nothing but gives everything. As the rain began to fall again outside, Mabel hummed softly while Vanessa worked beside her. The diner glowed like a beacon in the storm, a small miracle of second chances. Weeks turned into months, and Mabel's place became something extraordinary. It wasn't just a diner anymore. It was a sanctuary. The kind of place where lonely people found company, broken souls found forgiveness, and no one ever ate alone if Mabel could help it. Every morning, the aroma of coffee and cinnamon rolls drifted down the street before sunrise, mingling with the sound of gospel music that floated softly through the open windows. Locals began calling it the diner that heals hearts. Mabel had grown stronger since Desmond bought the place. Her back didn't ache quite as much, and her laughter came easier now. Each day, she wore her white apron like armor, stitched with love, grace, and a quiet pride that came from purpose restored. And beside her, to everyone's surprise, including her own, worked Vanessa. She wasn't the same woman who had stormed into that diner months ago, her heels clicking like thunder. The transformation was slow, but real. Her manicured nails now bore faint scratches from washing dishes, her once expensive clothes replaced with simple blouses and jeans. She wore no jewelry except a small cross pendant she'd started wearing again. At first, customers recognized her from the viral video. Some whispered, others refused service, but Mabel never flinched. "She's family here," she would say, "and family learns by doing." Vanessa would simply bow her head and keep working. She didn't defend herself, she didn't have to. In time, her sincerity spoke louder than her past. Desmond stopped by often, though he always pretended it was just to check on the books. Truth was, he found peace in that little diner, the same peace that had saved him long ago. He'd sit in the back booth with his coffee, watching Mabel and Vanessa move in quiet harmony behind the counter. One morning, as sunlight spilled across the freshly polished floor, he arrived earlier than usual. The bell above the door jingled, and Mabel looked up from her baking. "You're out and about early, Mr. Carter," she teased. He grinned. "Couldn't sleep. Thought I'd stop by and see how my two favorite ladies are doing." Vanessa emerged from the kitchen, flour smudged on her cheek. "Don't tell her that," she said, pointing playfully. "She'll make me mop twice today." Mabel laughed, shaking her head. "If mopping built character, you'd be a saint by now." Desmond chuckled, then turned serious. "Actually, I came by to ask something important." Mabel raised an eyebrow. "That sounds dangerous." "I want to expand the diner. A second location, same name, same spirit. A place where people can eat and feel seen, just like this one. But I can't do it without you two." Vanessa froze. "Us?" Desmond nodded. "You, Mabel, and me. Partners." Mabel set down her rolling pin, her eyes wide. "Desmond, I'm too old for all that business nonsense. I'm happy right where I am." Desmond smiled. "Then we'll bring this goodness to people who need it most. You don't have to run it. You just have to keep being its heart." Vanessa's voice trembled. "You trust me? After everything I've done?" Desmond looked at her steadily. "You earned it, not by what you said, but by what you've shown. You've changed, Vanessa. That's the kind of person I want on my team." Mabel's eyes misted over. "The Lord surely works in mysterious ways." A slap turned into salvation. Vanessa let out a small laugh through her tears. "You make it sound like a sermon." Mabel winked. "Honey, life is a sermon. You just got to decide what kind you're preaching." They spent that day talking plans, sketching designs on napkins, and dreaming big dreams over steaming mugs of coffee. Later, as the sun dipped low and painted the diner in amber light, Mabel leaned back in her chair, smiling quietly. "You know, I used to pray for just one more good reason to wake up in the morning, and now I've got two." Desmond grinned. "Then it's settled. Tomorrow, we start building the second Mabel's place." Vanessa looked around the diner, the laughter, the music, the faces that had forgiven her. "Maybe this time," she whispered, "I'll finally build something that lasts." Mabel reached over and squeezed her hand. "You already have, baby. Right here." She pressed Vanessa's palm against her heart, smiling. Outside, the rain began again, light and cleansing, tapping gently against the windows. The neon sign flickered softly. Mabel's place, glowing like a promise in the night. And for the first time in years, all three of them knew. The past might bruise you, but kindness could still make you whole.
The next morning, the hospital was filled with the aroma of disinfectant and the faint sound of nurses chatting in the corridor. Abigail's eyes fluttered open, blinking at the white ceiling above her. For a moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then, as her gaze shifted to the side and met a familiar face, the memories returned like a flood. There sat Mr. Daniels, the billionaire she had once served tea to in the orphanage. His eyes were gentle, his suit crisp yet understated, and his hands folded as though in quiet prayer. When he saw her awaken, relief swept across his face. "You're awake," he said softly. "You scared us, Abigail." She struggled to sit up, but he quickly moved to help her, placing a hand behind her back. "You shouldn't have paid my bills. You've done enough already." He smiled faintly. "You raised me when no one else would. You gave me kindness when the world had none. This isn't charity. It's justice." Tears gathered in her eyes. "Justice?" "Yes," he said, his tone deepening, "because too many people walk this earth thinking power gives them the right to humiliate others. But what they don't know is that the people they mistreat may one day hold the key to their redemption or their ruin." As if summoned by fate, the door swung open. In stepped Margaret, The woman who had slapped Abigail, her face pale, her hands trembling. She wasn't dressed in silk anymore. Her jewelry was gone, replaced by a plain blouse and jeans. Abigail stiffened. The air thickened with tension. Margaret hesitated near the door before whispering, "I heard you were in the hospital. I needed to come." Mr. Daniels turned his gaze toward her, unreadable. "You have a lot of nerve walking in here after what you did." Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "I deserve that. I was cruel. I was raised to believe that money made me better than others. But when you fired me, when the world turned its back, I realized what I'd become." She looked at Abigail, her voice cracking. "I came to apologize. Not because I expect forgiveness, but because I can't sleep knowing what I did." Abigail studied her for a long time. Her heart battled between pain and grace. Finally, she spoke. "When you slapped me, I didn't hate you. I pitied you, because only a broken heart hurts others to feel powerful." Margaret broke down, sobbing quietly. Mr. Daniels watched silently, not with anger, but with a strange kind of approval. Redemption, he knew, often arrived through humiliation. He stepped forward. Apologies don't erase what happened, but they can start to heal what's left. He looked at Margaret and then at Abigail. "If you truly want to make things right, there's something you can do." Margaret wiped her tears. "Anything." He smiled faintly. "Help us." "Help you with what?" He turned to Abigail. "We're opening a foundation, one that trains elderly and widowed women in hospitality, cooking, and service. No one should ever be mocked for working hard or aging with grace." Margaret's lips trembled. "You'd let me be part of that?" Abigail nodded gently. "If your heart has changed, then yes, we all deserve a second chance." The billionaire placed a reassuring hand on both women's shoulders. Then it settled. Outside, sunlight poured through the window, bathing the sterile hospital room in gold. It felt symbolic, like a divine whisper, that even the deepest shame can bloom into light. But neither Abigail nor Margaret knew what awaited them next. The grand opening of the foundation, where their pasts would collide once more before the world's eyes. Would forgiveness truly mend the scars? Or would old wounds resurface when the cameras started rolling? The answer would come soon, and it would change all three of their lives forever. The day of the foundation's grand opening dawned beneath a sky streaked with gold and violet. The air carried a sense of renewal, like the world itself was exhaling the weight of old sins. A wide banner stretched across the building's entrance. The Abigail Foundation. Dignity in every hand. People from every corner of the city had gathered. Journalists, former co-workers, social workers, and curious onlookers. What once had been a small, forgotten café now stood as a training center for elderly women and widows, complete with a gleaming kitchen, classrooms, and a cozy dining area filled with laughter and the scent of freshly baked bread. Inside, Abigail stood before a mirror, smoothing down her modest dress. Her hands trembled slightly, not from weakness, but from disbelief. The world that had once spat on her name now called her Madame Abigail, founder, mentor, and mother figure to dozens of women who once stood where she had. Behind her, Margaret approached quietly. She wore no makeup, no jewelry, just humility. "You look beautiful," she said softly. Abigail turned, offering a gentle smile. "And you look human again," she replied. There was no cruelty in her tone, only truth. Margaret nodded, tears shining in her eyes. "I'll never forgive myself for that day, but thank you for letting me make it right. You've already started, by staying, by serving." Outside, applause began to rise as the billionaire, Mr. Daniels, stepped onto the stage. Cameras flashed.
His voice carried through the speakers, steady and commanding. Ladies and gentlemen, today we celebrate more than a building. We celebrate rebirth, the rebirth of dignity, kindness, and second chances. He paused, glancing toward Abigail. When I was a child, a poor widow in a small orphanage fed me from her own plate. She didn't see a poor boy. She saw a soul worth saving. Years later, the world tried to humiliate her, but she reminded us all that grace cannot be destroyed by cruelty. The audience turned to see Abigail walking slowly toward him. The crowd erupted into applause. She smiled shyly, her eyes glistening with gratitude and disbelief. And, Mr. Daniels continued, this foundation bears her name not because she sought glory, but because she showed us what true wealth looks like. When the applause faded, he turned to Margaret, standing behind Abigail. And sometimes, even those who have failed us most can change. Margaret will be helping manage the center, ensuring that no woman here is ever made to feel small again. Gasps murmured through the crowd. Some surprised, some moved. Margaret stepped forward, her voice trembling. I once thought kindness was weakness, but Madame Abigail showed me that humility is the strongest armor a person can wear. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of the forgiveness she gave me. Silence followed, the kind that weighs heavy and sacred. Then one by one, the women in the audience began to clap. The sound spread like a wave, until the entire courtyard thundered with applause, cheers, and tears. Abigail felt her knees weaken. Mr. Daniels caught her arm gently. You did it, she whispered. No, she replied softly. We did. That evening, as the sun melted into the horizon, Abigail sat outside the center watching the women she had helped, laughing, learning, living. The light touched her face, turning her wrinkles into something like scripture, a story written by time, suffering, and grace. Margaret brought her a cup of tea. You should rest, she said. Abigail chuckled. Maybe later. I'm afraid if I close my eyes, I might wake up and find this was all a dream. Mr. Daniels joined them, his hands in his pockets, his voice low and warm. Then let's make sure you never wake up from it. They sat together in silence. The billionaire, the humbled woman, and the once broken widow, watching the first neon lights of the foundation flicker to life. Above them, the sign glowed softly in the dusk. The Abigail Foundation. Dignity in every hand. And for the first time in decades, Abigail felt what she had given to others all her life finally returned to her. Peace.